We are now going to be having 12 shiurim on 12 perakim. These are the 12 perakim of the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and I think it's very important before Pesach to get to know these 12 perakim. Now, there's stories and there's medrash and there's teachings from the Gemara that has been gotten around. To know the full story from beginning to end, what the Torah says, what we can learn from the actual psukim, and what actually happened as the Torah says it, I think is very, very important, and that's the purpose of this share. So let's dig in. This is share 6. This is Parak Vav. In the end of the last Parak, Moshe Rabbeinu was in the middle of a conversation with Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu had gone to Paro, and Paro made the task worse for Bnei Yisrael, and Moshe Rabbeinu was reporting that to Hashem. So Hashem answers, Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, Hashem said to Moshe, Ata Sireh, you will see, Asher Esel Afare, what I'll do to Paro, Ki, because Biyad Chazaka Yishalchem, because with a strong hand he will send you. Biyad chazaka yigar shem me'artzai, and with a strong hand, the Bnei Yisrael will be driven from the land. So before, when it was on Har Sinai by the burning bush, Hashem already said that the Melech Mitzrayim will not be able to send Bnei Yisrael out, even with the Yad Chazaka. So what's going on? Like we explained, the Melech Mitzrayim, the nomarch of the local district of Mitzrayim, which included Goshen, he could not send Bnei Yisrael out because he did not have the power. However, Paro, the emperor of the entire Eretz Mitzrayim, the entire country of Egypt, he had the power to send, and he was the one who was going to be the brunt and get the receiving end of the Yad Chazaka Uzor Etuya, and that's when Bnei Yisrael will be sent out. The rest of the parak then recaps the conversation that has been happening between Hashem and Moshe until now, and also goes through the lineage of Shevet Levi. Vayidaber Elokim Moshe. So Hashem spoke to Moshe. Vayomer Elav, and he said to him, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. Hashem already said this by the burning bush on top of Har Sinai, on top of Har Horev. The Eira El Avram El Yitzchak El Yaakov. I appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov Kel Shakai as the name of Kel Shakai. In other words, whenever Hashem appeared to Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in terms of promising that they will get Eretz Canaan, that was always with Kel Shakai. Ushmi Hashem, but the name of Hashem, the name that Hashem will not only promise the land, but give the land and protect them and be with them always. Loi noidati lahem. I did not make myself known to them. I never completed the task. They heard the promise from Kel Shakai, from my attribute of Kel Shakai. However, my attribute of Yud Ke Vav Ke, of fulfilling the promise, of protecting them and giving them all the bounty, that they did not know. I did not make myself known to them in that respect. The Gam, and also Hakimoisi as Brisi Itam, I also established a bris with them. Losais Lahem as Eretz Canaan, to give them the land of Canaan, as Eretz Migurehem, the land that they were living in, Asher Garabo, they were sojourners and they were living there. The Gam, and also Anisha Mati as Nakas Bnei Yisrael, I heard the cries and the groans of the burdens of Bnei Yisrael. Asher Mitzrayim Me'avdim Oisam, the Mitzrayim put them to work. Again, remember, they weren't slaves per se, they were indentured servants, definitely put to hard civil service labor. The Ezkar as Brisi, and I remember my bris. Now, this is the Torah elaborating more of what Hashem had already said in Perek Gimel, in the monologue on Har Sinai. The Torah elaborates further. L'chein, and so, Emer Bnei Yisrael, say to Bnei Yisrael, Ani Hashem, tell them Ani Hashem. Remember, Moshe Rabbeinu asked Hashem, what name should I tell them? So at first Hashem said, Ekia Asher Ekia, I will be what I will be, and Ekia sent you. But then Hashem also said, Ani Hashem, who was the Kel Elokei Avos. Elaborating on that, Ani Hashem, I am Hashem, the tetragrammaton, the four-letter word Yud Ke Vav Ke. So V'haitzesi Eschem, I will take them, mitachas of loisam, from under their burdens, Mitzrayim, that Mitzrayim is putting on them. The Tzalti, and I will save them, Eschem, me'avoidosam, from their labors. The Ga'alti, and I will redeem Eschem, them, Bizroi Netuya, with an outstretched arm, Ubishvatim Gedolim, and with great judgments. Blakakti, and I will take Eschem, them, Li, for me, la'am, for a nation. When is that? That Hashem already said, I'm going to have him serve me on this mountain on our Sinai. So that's what Hashem is saying. V'lakachti eschem li la'am. They'll be for me a nation. V'hayisi lachem lilakim. And I'll be for them a God. That's when Hashem will be, when Hashem gives the Torah on our Sinai. V'yidatem. And you'll know, Ki ani Hashem, and you know that because I am Hashem, Elokeichem, their God, Hamoitzi Eschem, that took them out, Mitachas of Loisa Mitzrayim, took them out from the burdens of Mitzrayim. So Hashem is elaborating, right now, Torah is elaborating what Hashem had spoken to Moshe Rabbeinu previously. And Hashem also had told them, to take them to the land of the Canaanim, of Chiti, of Moiri, of Usi, and they're going to get the land flowing with milk and honey. So Hashem is elaborate. So Hashem has elaborated, and Torah is elaborating here. I'm going to take, bring them to the land. Asher Nosasi Es Yadi. I'm going to bring with my hand. Losais Isa to give it to them. La Avram, the Yitzchak Yaakov, and I told already to Avram Yitzchak Yaakov, V'nasati Isa Lachem, and I'm going to give it to them, my Russia, for an inheritance. Ani Hashem, I am Hashem. Vaydaber Moshe Cain El Bnei Yisrael, and Moshe said this to Bnei Yisrael. So now the reason why the Torah is reiterating and elaborating on what Hashem had told Moshe Rabbeinu originally in perakim, because it's saying that Moshe Rabbeinu told this to Bnei Yisrael, V'lo shamu Moshe, and they couldn't listen to Moshe. Mikaitzer ruach, because they were short of spirit, and they were hard at work. So before, we actually saw in the Torah that they actually did listen to Moshe Rabbeinu and they bowed down. That was, we mentioned, was eventually. They did listen to Moshe Rabbeinu, and they eventually bowed down. But what happened here, after the incident with not having to have their own straw, and having to collect the straw, and now not only were they busy making the tally of bricks, but busy also collecting their own straw, so then they couldn't listen to Moshe. Doesn't mean they couldn't listen to him specifically or literally. No, what it means is they couldn't listen to him because they couldn't relate to him. Now Moshe Rabbeinu had originally said, Hashem, don't send me because they can't relate to me, because I am the one who spoke to Hashem. Hashem appeared to me, and therefore they're not going to believe me because since Hashem appeared to me, I'm not a Baal B'tachan. I'm someone who knows of Hashem. I don't just believe that Hashem exists. I know of Hashem because I spoke to Hashem. And I heard Hashem speak to me. Therefore, I'm unrelatable to them. So Hashem had to give Moshe Rabbeinu 3 signs to show him also to be a Baal B'tachan. And those 3 signs ended up really culminating in, by the Yam Suf, when Moshe Rabbeinu did something on the edge of the Yam Suf before Hashem split the Sea of Reeds. And that's when they were Raminu B'Hashem, Ube Moshe Avdoi, and that's when they believed in Moshe. Okay, that's a very different story, that's a different share. But for right now, you should just know that Moshe Rabbeinu had this complaint, and he was right, because they couldn't relate to him. Here they were not only working in mitzrayim, but they knew that they were working in a job that was leading them to the death, because they knew if they do not fulfill their quota, if they give any excuse to Parai, it is going to be their own death. So they knew they weren't really a useful workforce, because they realized if they were a useful workforce, Parai would never have taken away the straw from them, because Parai needed the bricks. So he would have punished them a different way. But since they saw that Parai was taking away the straw from them, making their task harder, and they couldn't reduce the quality or quantity of the tally of bricks, which really meant that Parai was just giving them an excuse to fail, which meant that they were really not a workforce that was worth anything. So now the worst thing a person can have and be in life is doing work that is worthless. To do something knowing that it's going to turn into nothing. To spin a wheel all day long knowing it's not attached to anything. That's the worst thing, when a person knows they're being unproductive and yet they're compelled to work. That's why people get very frustrated in life with their work when they don't see results. So therefore, they cannot relate to Moshe. Moshe here is a person, a prince, a person who was in the Pharaoh's palace, the person who was something of Midian, the person who came to them, who had spoke to Hashem, and yet what were they? They were someone who was just spinning their wheels, just waiting for Parai to kill them. So therefore, they couldn't listen to Moshe. Now there's a break, and it continues. So Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu also. This is now elaborating what Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu on the way back to Mitzrayim by the Malone, by the inn. Boy Daber, go speak El Paray Melech Mitzrayim, to Paray, the king of Mitzrayim. So one second. You've been telling me the entire time that Melech Mitzrayim is different than Paray. We see here the pasuk says Paray Melech Mitzrayim. What does it mean, Paray Melech Mitzrayim? So this is the second time that it's called Paray Melech Mitzrayim. It calls Paray Melech Mitzrayim here, and it calls Paray Melech Mitzrayim previously when Yosef was taken out of prison and he was made viceroy. Why is that? Because the original time that it was Paray Melech Mitzrayim, Paray was Melech Mitzrayim. There was only a small little country called Lower Egypt, and there was Paray who was the pharaoh and the king, Melech Mitzrayim, of that small little country. And then, through the famine and through the wealth that Yosef was able to procure for Mitzrayim, when there was a famine in Canaan and a famine in Mitzrayim and all the surrounding lands, and the surrounding lands ended up selling their wealth and themselves and their cattle and their flock and their land to Mitzrayim for food and for seed. That's when Mitzrayim became from a small little country to the massive Eretz Mitzrayim that it was Lower and Upper Egypt, and therefore the capital was able to move further south to Thebes. That's when Paro was Melech Mitzrayim, when he was a small little city-state king, because that's what it was. Egypt was a small little tiny country. Now that it's Eretz Mitzrayim, there was Paro, and there was Melech Mitzrayim, as well as there was Melech over the other little districts. Why is Paray called Melech Mitzrayim here? Because since the whole entire burden, like we spoke about with Parak Aleph, of the Hebrews came onto Paro's lap, how to deal with them, and how to curb their growth, and how to control them, make sure they don't join the enemies. It fell from Melech Mitzrayim's purview. He threw it onto Paro's lap. And because Moshe Rabbeinu already went to Melech Mitzrayim, and Melech Mitzrayim could do nothing for him. So really now what happened was Paro took over the task himself. So Paro wasn't just Paro over the entire Mitzrayim, but he now was actually dealing day to day with the Bnei Yisrael. And he probably ousted this king, who was the local nomarch. He probably ousted him and took direct control over Goshen. Politically, things have changed. Vayishalach es Bnei Yisrael me'artzai. Go tell this Paray to send out Bnei Yisrael from his land. Vaydaber Moshe, and Moshe said, L'fnei Hashem Lemar, and Moshe said for Hashem saying, Hey Bnei Yisrael, lo yishamu elai, the Bnei Yisrael can't relate to me, they don't listen to me. Eich yishma'eni Paray. How is it possible that Paray is now going to listen to me also? So Hashem had told Moshe Rabbeinu, and now Moshe Rabbeinu was telling Hashem, one second, now things changed. That's why the Torah is reiterating it over here, because now Moshe Rabbeinu didn't answer to what Hashem told him before. So it makes sense to put the conversation together here. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, if they can't understand me, they can't relate to me, how is Paray going to relate to me? I am not a Egyptian prince. I'm also not a prince of the Ivrim. I don't really belong to anyone now. Right now, really, I'm a Midianite. That's where I've been for the past 40 years, out of Mitzrayim. So if they can't relate to me, certainly Paray can't relate to me. And therefore, I already have one hand tied behind back. So what's V'ani Aras V'sayim? So I have, basically it's like a foreskin above my lips. My lips are covered, right? They're covered because I don't really speak Lashon HaKodesh very well, and that's why I have Aaron to help me. But as far as speaking to the Egyptian Paro, I'm already also limited in that regard because I've been away so long, and also I really have no status. So what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying is, I am unable to be the proper mouthpiece, and we see it because their burdens have been made worse. So Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron. This is another break section, so it's another small section by itself, or one pasuk section. The Yitzavim el Bnei Yisrael, you're going to command to Bnei Yisrael, the Al Paray Melech Mitzrayim, and to Paray, the king of Mitzrayim. L'haitzi as Bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim, they can take Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. So one second, we know the entire time that Hashem said go to Paray and tell them they go out was only to so they can go for a 3-day holiday, and Moshe Rabbeinu keeps repeating the 3-day holiday request throughout the Seres Makis, that Hashem spoke to Moshe and to Aaron, and he commanded to Bnei Yisrael and to Paray Melech Mitzrayim So now all parties involved, l'hoitzi es b'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim, not to actually take Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim, but in regards to taking them out of Mitzrayim. So to Bnei Yisrael, Hashem gave the message to Moshe and to Aaron, speak to the elders, speak to Bnei Yisrael, etc., etc. To Parai, Hashem gave the message, speak, etc., etc. So that's what I'm saying. L'hoitzi, in regards to, as Bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim, taking Bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim, Hashem had spoke to Moshe and Aaron and gave them all the command. Now that all this command was finished, and we have the elaboration of all the conversations between Moshe and Hashem, so now we're going to talk about what we should have talked about in the beginning of Parak Beis, which was a certain man from Levi married a woman from Levi. Now we're going to talk about who's who, what's what. Eila Rashi Beis Avaisam. This is the heads of the household. Bnei Ruvain, Bechor Yisrael, Chanoich, Upaloi, Chetzraim, Becharmi, Eila Mishpachas Ruvain. This is the families of Ruvain, Bnei Shimon, and Bnei Shimon, Yemuel, the Yamin, the Oyhad, the Yachin, the Tzoichar, the Shaul ben Hakinanis, the Eila Mishpachas Shimon. This is the families of Shimon. The Eila Shemais Bnei Levi, and this is the families, the names of Levi and who was born to them, Gershon, Kosim, Merari, Ushnei Chai Levi, and the years of Levi, Sheva Ushloishim Ma'as Shana, was 137 years. Bnei Gershon, the sons of Gershon, so it goes elaborates more into the children of Levi because of Moshe and Aaron. Bnei Gershon and the sons of Gershon, Livni V'Shimi L'Shvachaisam, Bnei Kahas, and Kahas Amram B'Yitzar, V'Chevron V'Uzel, Ushnei Chai Kas, and since come from Kas, so we're going to elaborate on Kas. Shalish Shloishim Me'ashanam, 133 years of Bnei Merari and Merari, Machli and Mushi, Elam Shchais Levi, L'Toyasam. This is the families of Levi and their children. Vayikach Amram Mesecheved Doidasolai, Leisha, and Amram took Yocheved, his aunt, for a wife, Vatelud Loi, and she gave birth for him, as Aaron v'es Moshe, Ushnei Chai Amram, and this is the lives of Amram, Sheva Ushloishim Omi'as Shana. It was 137 years. Ubnei Yitzar, Kairach v'Noveg v'Zichri, Ubnei Uziel, Mishael v'El Tzafan v'Sisri, Vayikach Aaron es Elisheva bas Aminadav, and Aaron took for a wife Elisheva, the daughter of Aminadav, Achois Nachshain, the sister of Nachshain, Elisha for him for a wife, a tail of Loi, and she gave birth for him. As Nadav, v'es Avihu, v'es Elazar, v'es Itamar. He had 4 children. Uvnei Kairach, and the son of Kairach, Asir v'Elkanah, v'Ahi v'Asav, Eila Mishmachais HaKorachi. And this is the family of Kairach, v'Elazar ben Aaron, Lakach Loi, Nois Petuel Loi Lisha. So Elazar, the son of Aaron, took a wife, Petuel, from the daughters of Petuel, V'Tela Loi, and this unnamed wife gave birth for him as Pinchas, Eila Rashi Avaisam, Halavim Ushvaisam. This is the heads of the household for the families of Levi. Who Aaron and Moshe? This is Aaron and Moshe. Naming Aaron first because Aaron was the eldest. We just mentioned Aaron and Moshe was born. Aaron was the eldest. Miriam is not mentioned because Miriam does not have the male lineage, and this is focusing on the male lineage over here, the heads of the household again. Miriam was obviously his sister, and we know from context. Asher Amar Hashem Lahem, that Hashem said to them, Haitzius b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Mitzrayim al tzavaisam. They should take out b'nei Yisrael from Mitzrayim according to their legions. Heim hamedabrim el Parai melech Mitzrayim. And they are the ones who spoke to Parai melech Mitzrayim. Haitzi, in regards to taking out b'nei Yisrael Mitzrayim, who Moshe v'Aaron. This was Moshe and Aaron. And why is Moshe and Aaron first? Because Moshe was the messenger, and Aaron was his servant, his assistant. Vayhi Bayoim Diber Hashem El Moshe Be'eretz Mitzrayim, and it was on that day that Hashem spoke to Moshe in the land of Mitzrayim. Vaydaber Hashem El Moshe, and Hashem spoke to Moshe Lamer, saying, Ani Hashem, I'm Hashem. Daber El Parai, speak to Parai Melech Mitzrayim, the king of Mitzrayim. Es Kol Asher Ani Doiver Elecha, everything that I'm going to speak to you. Hashem had already said that. This is a reiterating. Hashem had already said that to Moshe Rabbeinu. You're going to speak to Parai Melech Mitzrayim. After he failed with the Melech Mitzrayim, Hashem had spoken to him again. This is reiterating. And reiterating again, Va'imar Moshe lefnei Hashem, and Moshe said before Hashem, Hey ani aras v'sayim. We're reiterating his objection, meaning aras v'sayim, my lips are covered, meaning I already have a disadvantage. I'm neither an Ivri nor am I a Mitzri. I'm neither going to be respected by the Ivrim nor respected by Paro, so therefore I'm already someone who is behind the eight ball in terms of being effective. The Eich Yishma Elai Paroi. How is it possible that Paroi is going to listen to me? So it's not further complaints, complaining time after time. This was just reiterating what was said. So the Perik Vav really reiterates a lot of what happened before, and then the story is going to go weiter all the way through the Geula.